Good evening. My name is Don Burgundy.
And I'm Mika Mayans.
And welcome to KNEWS News.
News that counts. And tonight's top stories. A famous composer comes back from the dead. Dead. And clashing between the Jets and the Sharks intensifies. Authorities try to rectify the situation. Will New York streets ever be safe?
And later, on-site footage at the BYU Deseret Towers, as well as an exclusive interview with Donathan Ben-Zakai.
First, on our top news story, Beethoven is back and has something to tell you. Melissa is with him as we speak, getting an exclusive interview you won't see anywhere else. Let's go to that footage.
Melissa?
Mr. Beethoven, thank you so much for having me in your home for this interview.
Please, just Ludwig. Beethoven was mein Vater.
Oh, Ludwig, all right. Well, first, I just want to ask you a little bit about your history. Well, what can you tell me about yourself?
Oh, well, most know that I'm very old. I come from a time where they were very big wigs, but I'm redhead underneath. I was a music composer, and I was a very successful pianist. I played the black and whites, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. My music is very popular, but many also know that I'm deaf, or I was deaf. I've come back from the deaf. It's a very good experience. And, I was a composer.
All right. Well, I know that you were deaf. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
How did that affect your career? How did people perceive you as a composer, although you were deaf?
Excuse me, I cannot hear very well.
Oh, I asked just about your career.
Just joking.
Oh.
Very funny.
Ludwig.
Yeah. My work, it became very famous, but at first it was very hard. People think, he cannot hear, he cannot know what he is writing in his music, but no, I was deaf and it was hard. Many thought that I could not do my job very well, but I showed them. I'm now very famous, there was a time when it was very hard. I was receiving a lot of criticism for my hearing, but I got through it, and now everyone knows my name. Not my first name, but everyone knows my name.
Thank you.
What an inspiring man.
This news just in. Gang fights have a prevalent place in the current New York streets. Two main groups, the Jets and the Sharks, fight for territory and power in a culture that abounds with people of different races and cultures. The Jets, who are predominantly white, have ruled the streets for years, but it seems they must give up a little bit of the power to the Sharks, the new group from Puerto Rico.
Shit.
You know, Michael, it's a terrible thing to see the violence among young kids these days. But fortunately enough, there are English teaching professionals out there who, through literature, are teaching children the consequences of their action. For example, in the literary text of Romeo and Juliet, as it says here in my notes, through reading this, the educators are addressing the violence problem and inviting their students to create a plan on how to produce a society that is more respectful of other cultures.
That's right, Donnie. We see what could happen if these problems aren't resolved. Death, hatred, misery. But we don't want to see those outcomes in our classrooms, so good thing for those English professionals who are working so diligently to save our society.
And we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. You look lovely today, Michael.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, yes.
Are you one of the many individuals diagnosed with xenophobia? Are you fearful of people who are different from you? Do you feel an unreasonable distaste for foreigners? If you do, help is right around the corner.
Hello, my name's Dr. McDreamy. Are you suffering from xenophobia? I want you to call the toll-free number on your screen. My new product, MCE, Multicultural Education in a Pill, is a solution to your xenophobic difficulties.
My doctor gave me MCE and I could go outside. It was the most amazing thing.
I can eat Mexican food now. It's amazing. And I'm not scared to buy gas at 7-Eleven.
Unlike most pills, MCE is for everyone. In fact, I recommend taking it in mass quantities.
Side effects may include a sudden desire for Mexican food, unwarranted interest in authors from other cultures, a desire to travel the world, interest in international and foreign music, impulsive dancing of the tango against one's will, and an uncontrollable drive to be the best dang teacher the world has ever seen.
If you or a loved one is unreasonably fearful of strangers or foreigners, don't hesitate to call the toll-free number on your screen now. And we're back. We all remember a local tragedy that occurred in downtown Provo when a building collapsed. At the site of the investigation of the collapsed building, we found that the building had a poor foundation. We have our reporter Melissa with crew members there now who are trying to restore the building. Melissa, what do you have to say to us?
I'm ready. Well, Donnie, it's interesting that you mentioned the foundation. The construction that's going on here is revolving completely around the foundational issues. It's being completely redone. Let's go see what the crew has to say. Excuse me, what is it that you're doing here? And what is that?
Well, that's a scaffold. We use it to support us as we build around, and we can move it as it goes higher or bigger. But you know what, Melissa? Looking at that scaffold, it makes me think of education. We can use that to teach our children.
Oh my, scaffolds can teach children. Well, I wouldn't know anything about that. I'm just a musician and a reporter for KNEW News and Counts.
Well, think of it, Melissa. If you want to teach someone something, anything, you need to teach them the basics first, just like a scaffold. Give them the support system so that they can succeed. So if you're going to teach them an instrument, you wouldn't just hand them the instrument and say, play Mozart. You would teach them the notes, teach them the tunes, and that way structure their learning. So just as we have here, the scaffold helps support and lead the students to what they need to learn.
Well, there you have it, Donnie. Scaffolds.
Thank you, Melissa. Now before we close the show, we have another exclusive interview that you will only see on KNEW News. Jonathan, a Jewish BYU student, has decided to come on the show to talk about his experience as a minority.
Mr. Ben Zakai, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. So, Mr. Zakai, I think our viewers are wondering, what is it like to be a Jewish man on Brigham Young University's almost completely Mormon campus? Well, you know, Don, truth be told, I'm actually not Jewish. Oh, really? Well, why did you decide to dress up as a Jewish man then? Well, part of it was through a class assignment, but it was also a way for me to experience what it felt like to be different. Wow, that's really interesting, Mr. Zakai. So, what is, from your perspective, what do you feel like is the most important thing that you learned from your experience? I think, in my experiences, just really being someone different on BYU's campus, the main thing and most important thing that I learned is that although I really wasn't treated, remarkably different on campus, but I learned what it is like to know that you are different and to feel different from anyone else. I mean, especially in dressing up as a Jewish man and wearing this kippah, my difference showed. It was apparent to everyone. You're planning on going into English education, is that right?
Yeah.
So, in the end, after this experience, what are the implications? Or what lessons do you feel like you've learned that you can incorporate into your teaching or your role as a teacher? Well, as teachers, we're going to be in situations where we're dealing with kids from a lot of different types of backgrounds. And their differences are going to be more than a kippah on their head. Their race difference, background differences, socioeconomic differences. I think recognizing from the teacher's perspective that each one of these kids is going to feel, in some ways, at some point in their time as a student, that they don't fit in or that they're different. And I think understanding that as a teacher, just that understanding can help you, reach out and touch the lives of all kids. I think that's the biggest thing that I'll put into practice as a teacher. Well, I think that just goes to show that you really don't know what it's like for someone else until you walk a mile in their shoes. Thank you.
That's all we have for you today.
Remember to tune in tomorrow to KNEW, News That Counts.
This is Donovan and Mika.
Thank you, and good night. I felt like it was a pretty good show today. How about you?
It was wonderful.
Oh, I would love a chip. Thank you.